Well, a new book looks at how the national debt affects the country and its politics and what we can learn from the deficit crisis faced by the Founding Fathers. And joining me now is Simon Johnson, co-author of White House Burning, The Founding Fathers, Our National Debt, and Why It Matters to You. Simon's also a professor at MIT's Sloan School of Management. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Let's talk about your book, first of all, which opens with a look at the similarities of our current problems and those that the country faced following the War of 1812. What can we learn from that time in America?
Well, the War of 1812 was a fiscal disaster for the United States, and it ended up with the British taking and burning Washington because we hadn't put enough money into the military and we didn't have the ability to issue and manage our public debt. And the point of the book, put a start in the book with this, is to remind people that bad things happen to good countries. We need to get control over the debt and the deficit in order to stay with our current trajectory with regard to jobs and prosperity.
Yeah, and in fact, those angry mobs, they marched to the Treasury, didn't they, Simon? And in the Treasury, there was no money. They hoped to loot it, right?
The only good news for the American side that day was when the British broke down, the British Army broke down every door and opened every strongbox in the U.S. Treasury. There was nothing in it because at that moment the U.S. was effectively broke. Let's not go there. Wow. Let's get ahead of this problem now before it gets out of control.
So how does the national debt affect your average American?
Well, the national debt does have an impact depending on how you react to it. If you say, oh my goodness, we can't afford Social Security going forward, or we have to end Medicare, that is dramatically going to change the welfare of both older people today and people who plan on retiring in 20 or 30 years. Social Security is very basic. $13,000 per year is the average draw in terms of pension. You don't get rich on Social Security. It's there as a buffer against poverty in case you outlive your assets, outlive the ability of your family to help you. If you end up turning the debt into what some people call a fiscal crisis and cutting Social Security, that is life-changing for millions of Americans in a very bad way.
So can you put in perspective how Social Security and Medicare, how that impacts the country's finances?
Well, Social Security and Medicare, these basic social insurance programs that are there for you when you're older,
right.
They have become, because of the aging of society, they have become the #1 item in government spending. Most of what the federal government does is provide income to older Americans. 40% of people, by the way, who use Social Security don't believe they participate in any government program. It's not only the quintessential government program. That is a big chunk of what the federal government does.
I mean, can you give us a percentage? I mean, is it greater than 50%? Is it 30%? I mean, what percent is it?
Well, it's greater than 50% now, but the trajectory, Alex, is the key thing. If you look out over decades, it's going to be closer to 60 to 70%. Society is aging. People are living longer. This is a success. This is a great demographic success for the United States, but we have to deal with the fiscal implications, and we have to think about what revenue do you need, are you willing to provide on a sustainable basis to support social insurance programs. You can't have it both ways. You can't have something, generous pensions, for nothing,
right.
Not paying taxes. You have to reconcile these two. People do not want to have that difficult conversation.
Can you answer this question succinctly? Because it's a tough one. It's become a political football. Whose fault is the national debt?
The Republican Party used to be a bastion of fiscal responsibility. President Dwight Eisenhower cared more about balancing the budget than about reducing the size of government or reducing taxes. There's been a dramatic shift over the past 30 years, and Newt Gingrich actually stands out as a politician most representing this shift. Newt Gingrich's current proposals before the Republicans in the primaries are for a debt to GDP at 150%, close to 150%. That's Greek levels of debt. So I'm afraid largely it's the Republicans and the Republican Party elite.
Okay, Simon Johnson, thank you very much. We appreciate it. And that's a wrap of this hour of Weekends with Alex Witt. Be sure to join me for a 2-hour edition of the show today.